Hey guys, back to a new video. This is kind of a tradition at this point, but my top 10 games of 2015. And these videos are always ones I really love to do these ones. And 2015's been a pretty huge year for video games. A lot of great games came out this year. Better than 2014, I'd say. A lot of people thought 2014 was pretty weak. I didn't think 2014 was that bad, but 2015 was definitely stronger. And I've played a lot of new releases this year. I'll talk about what I'm planning for next year. But people do all sorts of different things with these videos. Some people are doing like top 10 games they've played in 2015. It doesn't the games. They don't have to have released in 2015, but I'm gonna keep it with the way I've always been doing it, where these are 10 games that did release in 2015. I'm gonna go over what my favorites are, and at the end I'll talk about some honorable and dishonorable mentions. But yeah, let's just get right into it and jump into things with number 10, and that is Life is Strange. And this is a game that I don't think everyone's gonna love. It's got flaws. It's an uneven experience overall. The dialogue is often quite cheesy and cringeworthy, and the way the story wrapped up was not as it didn't wrap up in a satisfying way for me. Like that one ending happened to be way worse than the other ending, and it just overall it was an uneven experience. But as far as episodic games go, I think this hit a lot of emotional highs for me, and it has some of the best moments I've seen in a video game all year. And a couple of scenes in particular are always going to stick with me, and I still think about them, even though I've played this game quite a ways back. And it's actually a nice surprise too, seeing the developers. I think their name is Dontnod. They did Remember Me, which wasn't a huge hit critically or commercially, but Life is Strange has done a lot better, and it's a very genuine game. It's well intentioned, is what I want to say. And I just had a really great time with it. Some really memorable characters, and I think overall it's greater than the sum of its parts, and it did really kind of leave a lasting impact for me. At the same time, though, it is uneven, and that's what keeps it a bit lower on the list. But it made the list purely because some of the moments in this game are it's just like really emotional. They really pack an emotional punch that hit me in some ways that I wasn't expecting. And the writing, well, it can be uneven. It's also quite good at times as well. So yeah, it's not going to appeal to everyone, but it worked for me. Life is Strange was definitely one of the more memorable experiences of 2015. At number 9 is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, a game that's probably going to make the top of a lot of people's lists. It was a huge game, a critical smash. The critics really loved this one, and I have some issues with it. The combat, first and foremost, I think is generally average at best. I really was not a huge fan of the combat, and I didn't find it was a huge improvement over The Witcher 2. However, the rest of the game makes up for it. The side quests in this game are absolutely amazing. Like, the writing in this game is some of the best writing I've seen in a Western RPG. And it's kind of like dark high fantasy, which I really dig. Fantastic characters in this. Your choices really mattered in this in some really interesting ways. And yeah, I was just really, this game I was really involved in it. Like, it just, I did so many side quests. There's so much, like, the content, there was just so much content here, and I thought a lot of it was quite engrossing. The main story wasn't amazing. I thought it was decidedly weaker than a lot of the side quests, but it was still pretty good. I still definitely enjoyed it, and I did enjoy a lot of the customization there too. Like, as a role-playing game, I don't think it's quite up there with some others this year, but it definitely has some like fantastic writing and characters, and that's what really kind of pulled me through. And just the world in general, just the dark, brutal world. It's really well realized. Basically, a gorgeous game too. This game is just, it looks absolutely fantastic, and I definitely got to give props to CG Projekt Red for continually supporting this game with free expansions, as well as that new expansion that came out, Heart of Stone, I think it was called. Unfortunately, I haven't got around to playing that yet, but The Witcher 3 did last me quite a while. I put over like 70 hours into this game, and I was fairly addicted to it. But you know, it's a bit lower on the list for than compared to some people, and I do think it's actually a little overrated. You know, it's made number 9 on the list. I think it's definitely one of the best games of the year still, but you know, it's not one of my all-time favorite games or anything like that. But at the same time, it's definitely one of the more noteworthy games of 2015 for sure. At number 8 is Tales from the Borderlands, one of 2015's best surprises, as I wasn't even going to play this originally. Now, I've always been a fan of Telltale's games. I know some people aren't into them so much, but I've always enjoyed their games. I still need to play Game of Thrones, but I've heard mixed things on that. But Tales from the Borderlands got great reviews, and I gotta say, I was kind of surprised, because I'm not big on the Borderlands universe whatsoever, basically. So I was kind of hesitant still, even with the good reviews, but I'm glad I jumped in because I really enjoyed this game quite a lot. It's really funny. Most video games, I find, a lot of video games aren't that funny. I mean, most video games don't try for comedy, but even when they do try for comedy, I find that it's very hit or miss. But with Tales from the Borderlands, I thought it was consistently witty and charming and funny. Not all the time. It's not 100% you know, funny, but it's still fairly funny. But I was surprised by the emotional kind of moments that this game has, especially towards the end. Those really surprised me, and how the game wrapped up and took your choices into account, I thought was far more interesting than most of Telltale's games, and that really surprised me too. The characters are all really well written, really fantastic characters in this game. I can't think of a single character in this game that I didn't like. Yeah, overall, it's just a real nice surprise, and I think it's kind of getting overlooked as far as 2015's games go. And I have done a review of this game if you want to check that out, but I am glad I played it. It's definitely one of Telltale's strongest efforts, which is really surprising considering it's, you know, the Borderlands universe. I think I might prefer The Wolf Among Us still, The Wolf Among Us a little more. I think that's a little more my style, a little more gritty and dark, but it is definitely a nice surprise that Tales from Borderlands was not terrible. I was really not expecting this game to be great, but it really surprised me. At number 7 is Pillars of Eternity, and this is probably, I think, the most overlooked game of 2015, and I know the reason why. This was a PC exclusive, an old school, well, in the style of old school computer RPGs, and unfortunately, because of that, not a lot of people played it. Obviously, it had a huge Kickstarter, so anybody that wanted to play this and wanted to support this has probably played it, but I feel most people let this one pass them by, even some people with PCs probably. So I would definitely highly recommend Pillars of Eternity. This game really surprised me as well. Now, I haven't played a lot of the games this is influenced by, you know, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Planescape Torment, games like that, but I kind of got my feet wet with this game in terms of, like, the computer RPG genre, and I really loved this game. The main story wasn't amazing, but this game has my favorite side quests from any game this year. Yes, even more than The Witcher 3. I was enamored with pretty much every side quest in this game, and they had some like really interesting, unique side quests in here that were always kind of surprising and shocking you with how they kind of went along. Really surprising. The combat was very tactical with a lot of depth, many different character classes for you to play with and experiment with, which was great. It controlled well. It has like these gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds that just look absolutely amazing. The world was nice and fully realized, even though it wasn't huge. But I know there's, I think, like an expansion coming out for this, but I would definitely look forward to a sequel because, yeah, this game really surprised me, and it's definitely got me wanting to go back and play some of those classic games like Pillars of It, or not Pillars of Eternity, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and Planescape Torment and things like that. So yeah, if you're in for a really complex, in-depth RPG, definitely give Pillars of Eternity a look. You can even get it for like really cheap now. It dropped in price fairly quickly, as is the case with a lot of PC games. But yeah, not only a big surprise, I think it's getting ignored, especially even in like the mainstream press and from critics and things like that. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate because it definitely is one of the strongest RPGs of 2015, in my opinion at least. At number 6 is Fallout 4, one of the biggest games of the year, and one that disappointed a lot of people from what I've seen. And you know what, I really loved Fallout 4, but at the same time, I get why some people are disappointed, and I can see why some people actually even hated the game. It is less of an RPG than previous Fallouts, even Fallout 3, which I know. You know, there's a lot of hardcore fans of Fallout 2 and the original Fallout that just hate the Bethesda Fallout games, and I understand why, for sure. And this game had some major missteps compared to Fallout 3 in New Vegas, notably the dialogue system, where, you know, it was cool that your character was voiced now, but dialogue options were very limited and very vague as well. You couldn't really tell exactly what your character was going to say, and it was really dumbed down. The skill system was also dumbed down in a way, but I didn't mind that so much. But it for sure, Fallout 4 is definitely less of an RPG than it's always been. It's definitely more of a shooter now, and the shooting mechanics are much better, I have found. It feels good to use your guns now, and you know, VATS is still really fun to use. But for me, Fallout 4 was still fantastic, mostly due to the world. I'm a sucker for anything post-apocalyptic, and this was just, I was just totally invested here. But the main thing is the main story. I think this is Bethesda's best main plot in any of their games, and this has, I think, been a weakness for them. For quite some time. I was really like gripped by this. Like, it had some interesting sci-fi elements that I don't really want to spoil, but the story went to some very interesting places that I wasn't expecting. And unfortunately, the endings were lackluster. They were definitely disappointing, but overall, I really did enjoy my time with this game. I was really immersed, and it just, like, hours would just fly by. But you know, when I step back from it and kind of look at what the game does, I realize that it definitely has some fairly major flaws, and it's a bit of a step back in a lot of ways, especially from New Vegas. You know, that was Obsidian, and they're much better at writing. So Fallout New Vegas is still my favorite Fallout game. Now, I say this, I haven't played Fallout 2 or Fallout 1, but I do think Fallout 4 is better than Fallout 3, though. But at the same time, I understand how people are disappointed, but you know, I do think it's still one of my favorite open world games of the year, and even with its faults, it's you know, it's one of the more immersive game worlds out there for me. And I actually liked a lot of the settlement stuff too, even though it wasn't super complex. But again, that's another thing that some people weren't too big on. But personally, I actually enjoyed it. So yeah, Fallout 4 definitely has gotten a mixed reception, but I enjoyed it enough to for it to make number 6 on my list. All right, getting into the top 5, and at number 5 we have Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and this is a game that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. It came out very early in 2015, and I haven't seen it on a lot of people's lists. And I think it's just simply because people forgot about it, but I think it's actually, yeah, I think it's definitely one of the best handheld games that came out this year, although Monster Hunter is certainly not for everyone. I'm quite a big fan of the series. I like to buy every other entry, and Monster Hunter 4, I put over 100 hours into this game. This is, out of all the games that came out this year, this is one of those games that it's in the top 3 for hours put into it. Like, not many games I've put over 100 hours into in 2015, but Monster Hunter 4 was one of them. I got so sucked in with this game. And the reason why it's only number 5, even though there's not too much to complain about with Monster Hunter 4, but it's not a huge departure from Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. You know, obviously you have new weapons and things like that, new environments, but it's not a major step up. And Monster Hunter is one of those series where I actually do prefer it on consoles. I really loved playing Monster Hunter 3 on the Wii, actually. So it's one of those series that I really like to see make the move to consoles, but unfortunately I think it's just going to be a handheld-only thing for quite some time. But I'm glad this series has actually gotten bigger in the West now. Monster Hunter 4 was actually a pretty big hit, but the online was excellent. I loved just playing with random people online, taking down monsters. The combat is rewarding as ever. It takes a while to get used to the controls, and this game's got some of the most complex controls in any game out there. But once you do kind of understand how all the different weapons work, it's such a blast to take down these monsters. Very difficult. It's got a high level of challenge, but you know, it's super satisfying getting all these different parts from the monsters to make new weapons and armor. It's got an addictive gameplay loop where it's just it keeps you hooked. Where you want to get all these like really fancy armor sets. And of course, like the amount of content in this game is just insane. I'm definitely not anywhere close to being done with it. I'm actually planning on jumping back into this game at some point. But yeah, Monster Hunter 4, I just had a blast with this game. Was totally addicted for like at least a month, like a month straight. I was playing this game like nonstop. Definitely looking forward to Monster Hunter X. It looks like it's the combat's gotten quite a bit faster. And your character is like more agile in that game. There's more like acrobatics going on. But yeah, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, another kind of somewhat overlooked game, although mostly because it came out really early in the year. But yeah, a fantastic game. At number 4 is Xenoblade Chronicles X, a very recent game, and one that's so huge a lot of people probably haven't even finished yet. And yeah, this game, oh man, was I just so into this game and the world in this game. Now, it's a game with actually plenty of flaws. The main story is not amazing, it's okay, and it's gated in some really irritating ways, where you have to, like, you know, have like your affinity raised up, or you have to grind out an extra 5 levels in order to progress the story. And the game can be quite grindy at times too. But man, like the gameplay in this is just phenomenal. The battle system is so much fun. All these different kind of arts for you to use. The skill system is really interesting, where you kind of chose your own class, and you'd get new arts depending on the class you chose. The level of customization in Xenoblade Chronicles X was incredible. I love customization in RPGs, and this game, they went overboard here. All sorts of cool looking armor that you can get for your characters. The skells were fantastic, really rewarding when you finally do get them. And the world just had such amazing scale to it and verticality to it. It was just so much fun to explore this world, and each environment was so unique and different from one another. It's a gorgeous game, easily the best looking game on the Wii U. It really impressed me, honestly, for being on such an underpowered system. You know, it controls great as well. The soundtrack is kind of hit or miss, but there's some really good songs on it. It's a really engrossing, deep, complex JRPG. It doesn't explain a lot of its mechanics to you, and I guess that's another flaw with the game. But once you kind of understand how all the systems work, and once you finally see how they all kind of interconnect with each other, it's really satisfying. It's one of those games where I was just hooked, and I would just in terms of like hour-long sessions, I think this is the game out of any game in 2015 where I put the most amount of hours into it at one time. Like, I don't think I ever played this game for less than 6 hours at a time. Like, it's that kind of game. An absolutely huge game, so much content, some really interesting side quests in here as well. It's probably one of my favorite JRPGs in the last few years. Even though the main story is not that amazing. Like, it's not terrible, but yeah, it's definitely a gameplay over story game. And you know, as someone that's more into gameplay than story most of the time, it hit all the right notes for me. But it's going to be a divisive game for some, I think. I think people that really loved the original Xenoblade Chronicles will find a lot to be disappointed with this game, but I just absolutely enjoyed it. And it's a game I can see myself coming back to, for sure, because there's all these different kind of side quests and things like that I can be doing still, so yeah, it was a nice surprise. Unfortunately, it came out very late in the year, so a lot of people are still working through it. So it's probably not going to make a lot of lists, which is a shame, because I think it's definitely one of the best games of 2015. At number 3 is Super Mario Maker. Now, this might be a surprise for a lot of people. I know a lot of people aren't too hot on Super Mario Maker, and you know what? I can understand why. This is a game that's only going to appeal to a certain type of person. Now, I got really, and I mean really, into the creation aspect of this game. More than I was expecting. It always looked fairly fun and interesting, but I don't know, I wasn't originally going to get it, but I did eventually buy it once I looked at some reviews and things like that, and I'm still playing this game. Right now, actually, as I do this video, I'm still playing this game, and out of all the games in 2015, it's one of 2 that I've constantly come back to. since it's released, and I've made over like 30 levels, and I'm still making more levels. And the actual playing part of Super Mario Maker, I'll admit, is not amazing. There's some really cool ideas where you know, like the 100 Mario Challenge mode. It's a really neat idea where you have 100 lives to get through a bunch of random levels that are selected from the community. Unfortunately, the community sucks. People are just bad at making levels, and there's a lot of junk that you have to sift through. Now, there are some good levels, and Nintendo's made it easier for you to kind of find them with a lot of different kind of search functions in there. There's like an internet portal that they've released too. And one of the reasons I love this game so much is the way that they've supported it since release. There's been plenty of free updates. One of the big ones added checkpoints, which was one of the big issues I had with the game, and that got me back into things, and I was making all sorts of different levels. New course elements have been added, and the actual creation tool is amazing. This is like the best use of the Wii U gamepad other than like Xenoblade Chronicles X. It's so easy. You can learn this thing so quickly, and I actually didn't mind unlocking the course elements slowly, because you kind of got used to the editor more that way, and you kind of had to make interesting levels using only a limited tool set, which I kind of appreciated. And I feel like I got better at making levels, kind of working my way through it slowly like that. But some of the most fun I've had playing a video game all year is with Super Mario Maker. I brought this game to my friend's place, and I was just showing them my levels and getting them to play them and getting feedback on them. And it was such a great experience. It's one of my most memorable experiences from 2015. It's a great game to play when you've got other people over. It also can be pretty fun to try like the Expert Mario Challenge and see what kind of douche levels people come up with. There's some pretty nasty ones, but unfortunately, yeah, the community is mostly pretty terrible at making levels, but for me, the fun is making my own levels and getting other people to try them. And I understand that that's not going to appeal to a lot of people. If you want a more traditional Mario experience, you don't really get it here. There's some levels Nintendo created where you have like a 10 Mario challenge. You go through some levels Nintendo created, but they're all very short and simple. Nothing too complex there, and it doesn't beat like some of their more well-known games like Super Mario 3D World or something like that. But yeah, the creation aspect, the reason why this ranks so high for me, I just got so enamored with it, and I've probably put in, like, I want to say probably around 150 hours at this point. Out of all the games of 2015, this is the one I've actually put the most time into, and it's one I can keep coming back to until I like run out of ideas. And it's surprising the amount of stuff you can do with this editor. It's crazy. But again, I've talked about this, but I've always been interested in level design. Level design has been a huge thing for me, and it's something I've always paid attention to in games, whether it be a 2D platformer or an RPG. And you know, I grew up with Mario. Mario is very nostalgic to me, and I love just all like the backgrounds you can use here, the music, which actually the soundtrack in this game is amazing too. There's a lot of new songs that they've created specifically for this game, and they're absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's Mario Maker. I gotta say, it's definitely one of the most pure fun games I've played this year. Not going to be for everyone. Certainly doesn't appeal to everyone, but for me, it just really worked. At number 2 is Bloodborne. Now, this was the front runner for me for most of the year until I played a certain other game, but this is the other game after Mario Maker that I've come back to the most this year. And you know, it's a part of the Souls series, and you know, that's my favorite series of all time. Dark Souls is my favorite game of all time, so I was incredibly excited for this game, and it lived up to the hype for me. Now, there are some aspects that I wasn't too big on in the original release, most notably the build variety. It felt like a game I wouldn't go back to as much as the Souls games, but the DLC that was recently released actually fixed my complaint there. A bunch of more weapons were added, and there's definitely more build variety now. But Bloodborne, there's a lot to say here, but I'll keep things brief. But what's there to say about Bloodborne? Okay, first off, the art direction in this game is just fucking like god tier. It's absolutely incredible. This absolutely amazing, interesting setting that gets really weird and interesting later on. It's not. It doesn't. It's not all the same. Some really fantastic boss battles here. The same great Souls combat, but faster now. No shield to hide behind. It was a nice change. I know a lot of people are really into the more faster combat in Bloodborne. The level design is some of the best in video games. It's just absolutely incredible. Level design is just it's crazy. I have some minor complaints. I mentioned this in the DLC review, where I think the Blood Vials was a step back from Estus Flasks. The online system, I think, with the beckoning bells, I think was a step back as well. But it's got a lot of why I love the Souls games so much. Just really rewarding exploration, like just the thrill, like exploring is just it's such a thrill, man. Like it's just and this is another game that I played through with friends and by myself, and I've done multiple playthroughs now, and it's just it's still just as fun as it was, and like it's just the soundtrack is killer as well. The soundtrack is amazing as well. Very underrated soundtrack, but yeah, I'll admit I'm a bit of Souls fanboy, so I don't see how this could have been a major disappointment for me. But even with its minor flaws, it's just I had such a blast with this game. So much fun, very addictive, and yeah, I'm very interested to see if there's going to be a Bloodborne 2. Who knows? But I'm definitely looking forward to Dark Souls 3 now. But yeah, Bloodborne definitely one of the most satisfying and most fun games I've played this year. And at number one, finally, if you've been following the channel, you probably have guessed this, but yeah, my number one, my favorite game of 2015 is Undertale. And now, not only is this my favorite game of 2015, this is one of my favorite games of all time now, and would easily, I think, crack my top 10. Also, it cracked my top 10 favorite soundtracks as well. The soundtrack in this game is phenomenal. The best soundtrack of 2015, easily. Now, Undertale, unfortunately, is a game that I can't really say much about. It's the kind of game that you really have to go in blind, not knowing a whole lot about it. It would be easy to spoil the charm and fun that this game offers, because this is an experience you'll never forget. This game does some really unique, interesting things. I mean, I can give a summary. I mean, basically, it's an indie RPG designed by one person, Toby Fox, and he did the soundtrack as well. This guy is a monster talent, but it's very inspired by Earthbound, where it's kind of a turn-based RPG where battles are kind of in first person, but the hook with this game is that the combat system has bullet hell elements where you control like a little heart, and you kind of like move around dodging attacks in a little box that the enemies, the enemies have different kind of attacks. And the way, like this battle system, it seems simple at first, but the way the mileage he gets out of this like bullet hell mechanic is insane. And another big part of the game is the fact that you can get through the whole game without killing a single enemy, and that kind of messes with your expectations a bit. And this game is really about expectations, what you expect from an RPG and a video game in general. And this game will just destroy your expectations and mess with them in some very interesting ways. This game is absolutely fucking hilarious, I have to say. It's got some of the most hilarious writing I've seen in a video game. This game made me laugh more than any other game that I've ever played. It is consistently funny, but it's also extremely emotional. I'm not gonna lie, this game actually made me cry. It will get to you in some really interesting ways. It's just an incredibly emotional game. A big reason is the writing and some of the interesting twists and turns this game takes with its story. But the soundtrack as well is just incredible. The way, like, I don't really want to spoil the soundtrack either and talk about it too much, because it's actually a huge reason why the game is such a big success. Now, this game has already gotten a huge cult following, and I'm sure most people have probably heard of it by now, but it's only available on PC, and a lot of people have kind of asked, like, is it going to come to consoles or handhelds? And without spoiling anything, All I can really say is it can only work on PC. Now that probably sounds really weird, but again, I don't really want to spoil what makes this game so special. Now visually, it doesn't look like much. It's got a very minimal kind of art style, but it kind of grows on you. It really does. The visuals, I think, grow on you. So give it a chance if the first thing you see are screenshots and you're kind of thinking, that looks pretty ugly. But unfortunately, being on PC, only on PC, means a lot of people didn't play it, and that is a huge shame. I really think anyone with even a passing interest in video games needs to play this game. It's short. It's not going to take very long to get through. And out of all the games that came out in 2015, this is the one that I'm always going to say, buy it, play it. And actually, at the time of this video, there's a Steam sale going on where it's actually on sale right now. I think the Steam sale might be done by the time this video gets uploaded. But, I mean, the game is only $10. It is such a steal at that price, considering the experience I got. And this game blew my fucking mind. If you told me a game was going to come out in 2015 that I would enjoy more than Bloodborne, I would say you were crazy. But here we are with a game that I enjoyed more than Bloodborne and would easily rank in my top 10 games of all time. It's such a unique game too. It's unlike anything I've played. Obviously, there's the Earthbound inspirations for sure. It's one of Toby Fox's favorite games, but it's so much more than an imitation of Earthbound. But yeah, Undertale, hands down, my favorite game of 2015. So yeah, that's my top 10, and let's jump into some honorable mentions, some dishonorable mentions, and the games that I would have liked to play, but didn't get finished in time for the list. Now, the honorable mentions. These are the games that were close to making the top 10, but unfortunately I did have to cut them. And there was 24 games that came out in 2015 that I thought were excellent games that I would definitely recommend. So that's quite a lot for 2015, and there's a bunch of games that I haven't played too. So Ori and the Blind Forest is the first honorable mention. A really excellent kind of Metroidvania platformer. Very challenging. It's refreshing to get a platformer that will actually challenge you, and Ori and the Blind Forest certainly did. A beautiful game too. Fantastic art direction as well, but it didn't quite make it. It was close. It was close, but not quite. Axiom Verge is another kind of Metroidvania game. It's very similar to Super Metroid. It's basically like people keep clamoring for like a new Metroid, a new 2D side-scrolling Metroid. Well, Axiom Verge is your game. Definitely go and play Axiom Verge. It's got some annoying boss battles and some irritating design quirks sometimes, but it's still a really enjoyable game. Not quite enough to make the top 10, but I did definitely enjoy my time with it, Axiom Verge. Until Dawn, which this is the last game I played in 2015. I finished this game not too long ago. Went through it in one sitting, actually, with my brother and my cousin, and it's a really cool game. The story I liked way better than I thought I would. I mean, it's the kind of thing where it's a really cheesy kind of horror plot that if it was a movie, I wouldn't be so into it, but the way your choices are taken into account in that game is very interesting, and I thought it went to some interesting places. A gorgeous game, it's probably the best looking game on PS4, at least for me. But at the same time, it didn't blow my mind or anything like that. And if you want to get the true ending, you have to kind of replay large portions of the game, and it's not a game. There's a lot of slow exploration in that game, and it makes it so that it's not super fun to replay. And I think that's ultimately what kind of kept it off the top 10. But it was close. Again, very close. These games, these are all great games that I would highly recommend anyone play. Metal Gear Solid 5. This is a big one. That's probably going to make a lot of people's top 10s, although you're seeing a lot of a backlash towards this game, and that's actually kind of what kept it off the top 10 for me. I still stand by the fact that the gameplay in this game is absolutely incredible. I think its mechanics are amazing. That said, Chapter 2 is a mess. The storyline is basically unfinished in this game, and even what's there is not that great anyways. The side ops are pretty repetitive. I'll admit that too. So I mean, the game's got its flaws for sure, and I think that's what kind of kept it off the top 10. Even though the actual gameplay in that game, I think, is absolutely superb. Yoshi Woolly World is another game that I did a review on this. A very pleasant surprise considering every Yoshi game after Yoshi's Island has been fucking dog shit. but this one's actually good. Some really clever level design. One of the best soundtracks of 2015 is in this game. Definitely one of the better games on the Wii U, I would say. No, it wasn't. It didn't really like the collectible aspect to it. Was pretty annoying for me, and that I think that's generally what kept it off the top 10. And then the last game is Tales of Zestiria, which was another great entry into the Tales series, but it was kind of unremarkable. It wasn't. I didn't like really love it. I didn't feel like real strong about it, so it wasn't quite enough to make the top 10. But still worth playing if you're a fan of JRPGs for sure. Definitely one of the better Tales games. Here's the games that I would have liked to have played, and some of these apparently are amazing games that I just didn't have the time for or didn't get around to. Stella Glow. Everyone fucking raves about Stella Glow. Like, I have never heard any negative thing about that game, and it looks great. It looks like a really fun strategy RPG. I still need to pick that game up, but yeah, apparently it's a long game too, so I just wouldn't have gotten through it. Trails in the Sky Second Chapter. I think another game that was really overlooked this year, but it's a second part to a first game that a lot of people haven't even played yet. And Trails in the Sky Second Chapter, I'm planning to get to it next year. It's going to be long though. That's like an 80-hour game apparently. So yeah, I don't know. That's going to take a while to get through, and there's no way I would have gotten it finished for 2015, which is unfortunate because I think that might have had a good shot of making the top 10. Yakuza 5, which is out now, and I'm planning to play very soon, but it's from what I've heard, a fairly long game. It's supposed to be amazing. Like, everyone loves Yakuza 5, but that actually had a good shot at making the top 10, but just didn't quite have the time to get it done, unfortunately. Splatoon for the Wii U looks pretty fun. I still am kind of conflicted on that game. I think the single player would probably be not like it would probably not last very long, and then the multiplayer might be one of those things that I find fun for like a few days, and then I just stop playing it. So I don't know. That's one of those games that I would buy if it was like $30, 20 or $30. But it's being a Nintendo first-party game, it will never drop in price. So it's always going to be one of those games I'm relatively interested in, but I'll never really actually get to play. Another game on I think this was on like Steam, PS4, and Vita. I think it's called Read Only Memories, and this is like a cyberpunk visual novel. Point-and-click adventure game-ish. It reminds me a lot of Snatcher. Like, it looks like Snatcher, and it's got like this Neo San Francisco setting, but that game actually looks really cool. I would have liked to have played that. Apparently it's not too long, so I really should have probably played that, but that's an interesting game that seems to be quite underrated as far as 2015 games go. And then finally, the last game, Dragon Quest Heroes. I'm not a huge Dragon Quest fan, but that game looks pretty fun, and it looks more RPG than Dynasty Warriors, which definitely has me intrigued, but it's still pretty expensive. It's the kind of game that I would play, just not for full retail price, but there's probably some others I'm missing. If I didn't say it, I'm probably not interested, but there might have been a few. I don't know. But now let's get to the dishonorable mentions, or the games that I played this year that I really was not a fan of. Codename Steam. I don't know, man. It's weird. I really enjoyed the demo, but I don't know. I didn't like the full game. I think the one design decision that really just ruined that game for me is the fact that the enemies respawn constantly, and you have to always be moving forward. It's really frustrating, and it's I don't know. It's one of those things that was just so frustrating to me that I just couldn't continue playing the game, which is a bit unfortunate. Ori Sheka 2 Tainted Bloodlines. It's a cool game, a really unique, cool game that I would actually recommend to people that like dungeon crawlers, but I don't know, it just didn't quite gel with me, unfortunately. Lost Dimension is another one that has like this really cool plot that doesn't really do anything interesting with it, and it's got kind of generic strategy RPG gameplay that wasn't really enough to carry me through. I got about halfway through the game, and I just kind of started getting bored with it. Which is a bit of a shame. I was expecting to like that more. Legend of Legacy is another one. I know a lot of people really like that game. I liked the demo, and then the full game was like this really tedious slog with I don't know, like all the randomized elements to that game were annoying, and it was very grindy, and just I hated the fact that when you ran away from battles, you went all the way back to the dungeon or the area that you were in. It was just really annoying. There's so many design decisions in that game that were just so irritating, and they all combined together to just really frustrate me. Persona Dancing All Night, great rhythm gameplay, but that story mode was a fucking like ugh, I hated it. It was disappointing in a way because like I really like those Persona 4 characters, but that story mode is boring as fuck. Um, Final Fantasy Type Zero HD, I really did not like that game. I mean, the gameplay is okay, I guess, but like the world is really uninteresting. The story is terrible. Like the Persona-esque social elements that in there were like really half baked. The camera was terrible. The controls were really bad, and there was some really terrible dungeon design later in the game. I was just like, "Fuck this! I'm not playing this anymore." That I wish I didn't buy. I wish I didn't buy that game. And Little Battler's Experience was just not a terrible game, but it was just really dull for me, which is unfortunately with a lot of Level 5's recent games for me. But yeah, and then my pick for most overrated game of 2015. There's usually a few games that come out every year that get like amazing reviews, and I'm just like, why? It has to go to Batman Arkham Knight. I thought that game was thoroughly mediocre. You had those terrible Batmobile sections, some really boring mission design. You had the typical Ubisoft open world game design with a bunch of lame side activities that you have to do them all to even get the true ending for the game. The combat is very simple and just not all that engaging. The story was okay, but no, it's one of those games that like it looks beautiful, like it's amazing. Like, it looks great, but, like, actually playing it, like, is so mediocre. I really don't know why that game got the reviews it did. Like, I thought Arkham Asylum was a far better game. Like, much, much better. Like, that was, honestly, it was a pretty big disappointment for me. And that game's got, like, an 85 or 90 on Metacritic, which is ridiculous. Like, that... So, like, I don't know. It's my opinion, but maybe a controversial one. But I think that game is extremely overrated. But that's about it. Those are my dishonorable mentions. But yeah, what have you guys played in 2015? What are your favorite games of 2015? Definitely feel free to do a video response or leave in the comments what some of your favorite games were. And I guess for 2016, I'm actually going to do some things a bit differently. Actually. This year, I focused on new releases quite heavily. I didn't play very many older games, and it's something I've done for the past few years. But with 2016, I'm actually gonna tone it down on the new game releases. I'm only actually gonna get games that I know for a fact I want to play on day one and that I will enjoy. The games that I look at and I'm like, well, I'm relatively interested in. I might play that. I'm just not gonna buy. So the kind of games like Codename Steam. Legend of Legacy, Type Zero HD, Little Battler's Experience, like those types of games that they looked relatively interesting, so I bought them, and then they turned out to be okay games. So yeah, next year I'm actually gonna have more of a focus on playing older games, specifically PS1 and PS2 JRPGs, and also I have a few ideas with getting some feedback on what kind of reviews do you guys want to see. But yeah, I think that's kind of the plan for 2016. So the top games of 2016 video, it's still going to be games that come out in 2016, but I'm definitely not going to play as many of them next year. But next year's going to be insane. We've got some sequels to some of my favorite games ever, like Zero Escape 3, Dark Souls 3, Persona 5, even though it's not really a sequel, but Persona 5, come on, that game is going to be fucking amazing. Can't wait for that. But 2016, the new Zelda for Wii U, man, 2016 is probably going to be even better than 2015. 2015 was a strong year for video games, at least in my opinion. But that's it, guys. This video has gone on long enough. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.